20% off all my merch. Use code May4.
We would be honored if you would join us.
In Revenge of the Sith, we get the final chapter of Anakin Skywalker's life. At least, until he comes back 40 years later, and then maybe again in Episode 9. I hope. With his loss to Obi-Wan, he was left beyond damaged. He had no legs, lost his arm, and was burned alive to the point of near death. It was his sheer anger and strength in the Force that kept him alive, along with his new master, Darth Sidious. Vader arrives at the medical facility and is put together for days on end, turning into the robotic half-man, half-machine that Obi-Wan tells Luke all about many years later. Vader's cybernetics were extremely outdated for that time. They limited him a great deal. He couldn't raise his arms above his head, he couldn't move with anywhere near the same flexibility and ease he once had as Anakin Skywalker. In fact, the suit impeded his movement so much and his overall life that he had to learn how to use his lightsaber all over again, while diving into other forms of lightsaber combat to overcome his limited movements. General Grievous, as we saw, had full movement capabilities. He could spin, jump, and flex any which way he wanted, in most cases going beyond the normal range of motion that a human could do, enhancing himself completely. Vader was the opposite, and Sidious did this to him on purpose. He hated the fact that his protege of almost 2 decades, we have to remember here, Palpatine pretty much was manipulating Anakin from the age of 9 years old, all the way up until he was about 23. So that's a lot of time invested in this person, in this, what you think is going to be your apprentice, and at the end of the day, it all just goes to waste because he makes a stupid error. So you can understand Palpatine's, or Sidious's, extreme disappointment and anger. He blamed him so much to the point that he punished him with out-of-date cybernetics. The constant flashing of the center console, along with the sound of his every breath, kept him awake at nights. His burnt skin constantly itched and needed to be wiped by robots of necrotic flesh. The needles that would poke into his skull and body in order to connect him to the suit eventually became just routine, but never were comfortable. His prosthetics constantly put pressure on his stumps and hurt so badly with every movement that all he could do was just dig deeper into the dark side to help his pain. And that is exactly why Sidious gave him outdated cybernetics and just this really uncomfortable suit. Mainly because he was punishing him, but also to keep him obedient, to keep him in the dark side and give him this constant pain that could only be vanquished if he used more of the dark side, which is exactly what he wanted. The more pain he had, the more of the dark side he had to use. And it would act like this cyclical event that would keep him obedient to Sidious, his master, while punishing him and causing him pain. That's how the dark side worked. Sidious knew it, and he used it to his advantage. If he had given Vader a better suit, well, I've done a video on that and you guys can check it out later, but if he had given him a proper suit with the best elite cybernetics and technology, then Vader would be able to reach just about near his full potential, at least physically, allowing him to move properly. Now, one of the things that George Lucas always said was that Vader could only reach about 80% of his full power in the suit, pretty much, once he became a robot. And that's because once he lost a lot of his limbs, his connection to the Force diminished. And one of the main powers that he lost on Mustafar was his ability to see into the future. Anakin was very, very proficient in seeing into the future, but once he burned and lost Obi-Wan, he lost that ability forever. With a better suit, Vader wouldn't have the pains he had currently. He'd be able to sleep, and he would be much more centered. However, he wouldn't need to dive into the dark side as much, since it was his emotional pain that moved him to the darkness to begin with. The physical pain was just a constant reminder of the things he had done, and how they led him to where he is today. Every movement, every discomfort, every breath reminded him of Padme, of the Jedi, of how they held him back, and it was this reason that he pulled from the darkness for as long as he did. If Anakin didn't have this constant hatred pulling at him, I don't really think he would have turned or stayed in the darkness for as long. In the comics, Lord Momin, a worshipper of the dark side, hexed his mask to possess whoever wore it to become him. A recent theory I have is that Palpatine used this kind of Sith alchemy or spell to hex Vader's mask to lure him further into the dark side, combined with his physical pain, constantly reminding him of the life he now leads at his master's side. Now, I do believe if Anakin had been given access to the restricted section in the Jedi Temple, then he may not have turned to the dark side. Becoming a master for Anakin wasn't necessarily just for the rank, but in the book it explained how he needed it in order to go into the restricted section. There, he would try to find anything he could that delved into the dark side or the light side or whatever side in order to save Padme and reach ultimate power. But since he was denied this access, he felt the only way he could reach that knowledge was through Palpatine, and that's why we got the outcome we got. So let me know, do you think Vader's mask was hexed at all to keep him in the darkness? Do you think if Anakin had gone into the restricted section, he'd be able to figure out the way to cheat death? Thank you for watching this video. Please leave a like if you enjoyed it, and I will see you in the next one. Until then, remember, the Force will be with you always.
Now, fulfill your destiny.